Hello and welcome to the EDH Retcast, where we're all about Commander, data, and dad jokes. I'm Joey Schultz, and I'm joined by my fantastic co-host. He wishes that the old card, Harmonize, could also have the new mechanic called Harmonize. It's Matt Morgan.
So, Joey, I realize that my favorite deck has something in common with when I have to go see the barber. And of course, that reason is because it's when the hairs become apparent.
What? You've been sitting on that one for a while here, Matt. That was
longer than I care to admit, probably. So don't give me too much guff about that.
Oh wow! You're making me go rabid with these jokes. You really, really are.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad that they just spring to my mind every now and then, and you get to enjoy them.
Fantastic. All right, Matt. It's the two of us on this show. What are we talking about in this week's episode?
Well, this week's episode, we're going to talk about why Tarkir Dragonstorm has the best set of pre-constructed decks ever made. Not up for debate, and we're not going to debate that at all. But we do want to compare them and just see, like, are these truly some of the best precons that have ever been done? Because I have been just absolutely blown away with those.
This set of precons is such gas. It really is fantastic.
Gasoline. Yeah. Nitrous.
Yes, exactly. 2 Tarkir, 2 Dragonstorm. Aetherdrift's got nothing on the speed of the
2
set.
precon, 3 furious.
Absolutely. But like genuinely, we've been so impressed with these precons. So we do want to go over why we've fallen so in love with these and maybe how they compare to other best precon sets of the past as well. And maybe just try and see if we can actually pick out what is the best precon set of all time. I'm very intrigued to get into this one with you.
Big same.
Real quick though, we've got some shout outs that we want to do before we get into it. First, this episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. And through Dragon Shield, we've got EDH Rec exclusive sleeves, and they are so fantastic. The design, the way these sleeves shuffle, we got to give away our first batch of them at our event in Chicago, which was so cool. And if you want to get your own set of them, Dragon Shield's website is linked in the description. We're so delighted to have this partnership. When I saw those new sleeves, I squealed because dang it, we like Dragon Shield. Dana, I hope I did you proud with that, right?
I imagine you did. But if you would like to support the show, there's all sorts of other ways besides clicking on the link to Dragon Shield, making sure you're subscribed on YouTube, subscribe to your local podcast app. We have a lot of really exciting things for the rest of 2025 planned. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of those videos. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, talk about a challenge of stats. We've seen the numbers. Only about half the folks who watch us regularly are actually subscribed. So make sure you subscribe, y'all.
You can also head to patreon.com/EDHRetcast, where there's a patron tier of all sorts of levels, whether you want to join our Discord community, historic challenge of stats picks, there's all that and more over at patreon.com, including the coveted weekly patron shoutout. So this week we are going to give a very special shout out to Benjamin Crowdell, who, if you've gone to our patron Discord, you'll notice that Perpetual Notion had a notion to going to patreon.com/EDHRetcast. That's their Discord handle. So that's the only thing I could do, because Benjamin, you had me stumped with your actual name.
I was so confused. I was just like, Matt usually does a pun. Where's the pun? You've gone a step further. You've got into the Discord pun situation.
I had to look up their Discord name to get fuel for this one. So Benjamin, well played on yourself, leaving me stumped this week.
Right. Well played indeed. Okay, so Matt, let's get into our topic here. Obviously, the new Tarkir Dragonstorm precons are really captivating us, and we don't just want to get into the specific precons themselves. We also kind of want to dig into why they're captivating us so much. Why do we feel like these are resonating so much? And that, I think, leads us to maybe our first and most important question of this entire episode, which is basically, how do you grade or evaluate precons? What is it about a precon that does speak to you, especially a full set of precons that speaks to you? So where do you think we ought to start with that? What are some of the criteria that stick out to you, do you think?
So, I mean, it's so easy, right? Just to say, is this the best set of precons? Yep. Because absolutely with this, it is. But wow. It's hard to quantify that besides just a gut feeling. And so there's a few questions that we ask ourselves when just kind of trying to quantify how good we think that any set of precons are, an individual deck, or a set altogether. And there's 3 questions for the decks and then a question for the entire set, which come down to, is there an inventive archetype? Is there something new, some sort of ground they're breaking with that given deck? Are there interesting new cards, which is pretty obvious, but are there cool cards that people are going to play not just in the pre-constructed environment, but are they going to be looking to put those cards in other decks that they might be brewing themselves? And then third, are there good reprints? Is it worth it to get your hands on cards that you want anyways that aren't necessarily brand new cards? And then after we ask that about the individual decks, we can take a step back and say, how well do these decks play in a pod, in a biodome together? Do they play well? Or is there one that stands head and shoulders and kind of punches down on the rest of the crowd?
That is a huge one for evaluating a full set of precons together, because on an individual precon by precon basis, yeah, like you said, we're looking at like, is the archetype interesting? What are the new cards doing? And do they have broad appeal? The reprints, oh my word, those are so great. But sometimes we also do like to just keep the set of precons together if they're enjoyable to play against each other.
Yeah.
And some precon pods have missed the mark in the past, even if some individual precons were good.
Yep.
Like, oh, do they play well together? I sure hope so, because sometimes I like keeping them all together and just jamming a game that way.
Yeah, you and I both have done that a couple times. Like I've done that with the Lord of the Rings precons. You've done that a couple times too, where you buy those sets of precons all together and you just keep them around. You don't need to modify them. You don't need to make them their own special thing. You can just keep them for that shared experience where these were meant to be played together. And I want to just enjoy it because it was a good out-the-box experience.
There have been some standout precons that I adored from past sets, but when you play them in the environment that they were all constructed together, this is probably a reason why the Lord of the Rings precons do not stand out to you as the best precon set of all time. Some of those decks feel a little bit better than the others. Cough, cough, the elf deck is a bit of a mess, cough, cough.
Yes, it is definitely a question you have to ask is how well do these play together?
I mean, Matt, let's get right to business. Let's take those questions that we were asking, those evaluation points, and see how these new Dragonstorm Tarkir precons are stacking up against them, because the reviews for us seem to be pretty glowing. You seem really, really dang excited, and I'd love to see point by point, like trying to dissect our joy here a little bit to like see what it is that gets us so activated. And so what are the things that stand out to you from the new stuff that Tarkir is offering?
Well, let's just take everybody through these precons, because just in case people haven't had a chance, they missed it maybe during preview season. Let's go through these real quick and ask these questions about any given precon. And the one that I'm actually most excited about, I think, and Joey, you'll be so proud of me, the Sultai Arisen deck that's helmed by Taval, the Balanced Scale. This thing looks so stinking fun. Like I've wanted to make a Lands Matter type of deck for a long, long time. And this finally looks and feels like the opportunity that's doing something along the lines with what I like to do, but still a little bit outside my comfort zone. And so, yeah, just right away, that very first question, is it an inventive archetype? Maybe not, but the way it's doing it gets me excited.
Yeah, Sultai graveyards and lands stuff, like Sultai, lots of value over time, is the kind of thing that we've seen plenty of times before. So I could see a reason why people may be like, oh, Sultai doing graveyard stuff. But at the same time, the specific cards here care about stuff leaving your graveyard. And frankly, that is enough of a twist, enough of an adaptation that I'm just like, you know what? Check. The archetype has been invented upon. It's not reinventing the wheel, but you know what? It gave the wheel some spokes.
It definitely did, yeah. And there's a lot of different ways you can play around with it too. And some of the cards they put in there, just really, really sweet ways to incentivize you for capitalizing on getting cards going in and out of the graveyard. Stuff like the new card Taval's Judgment. That's 2 and a black for an enchantment. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn, and you can choose to draw a card, create a treasure token, or create a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. So I love putting things on the battlefield is just my thing. And so having Taval, the Balanced Scale, which is able to, put 2/2s on the battlefield whenever cards leave your graveyard, and Taval's Judgment, this is doing so many things that I love to do, but in a way that I haven't got to do it before.
I'm just so excited for the dragon in this deck that mills you, and then whenever you mill creatures, you can put one of those creatures onto the battlefield.
Oh my gosh!
Like what is that?
The colossal Grave Reaver?
Yes, that one. Like
that thing Wizards. Is so wild.
Wizards, it's not Christmas yet, but thank you though. Like I didn't realize I was getting a gift this early. Like yeah, this is full of some very spicy stuff, and it's not just the new cards, also the reprints. Life from the Loam reprint.
Oh yeah,
gimme. Yes. So like this is meeting some of that criteria. I am delighted.
Yeah, this one checks a lot of boxes. It's maybe not doing the most inventive archetype, but it is still like treading a little bit of new ground the way that it's getting it done. Yes. Definitely a ton of new cards, tons of new cards. Terrific reprints. Yeah, you mentioned Life from the Loam. Absolutely. That card's what, like $15, something like that? Super great reprint for sure.
Well, Matt, continuing our excitement with one of the others here, one that I also find myself very excited about also contains green and black, because you can't change who I am as a person. Sorry about it. From Sultai to Abzan here, Felothar the Steadfast and the Abzan defense deck. That one's also very, very fascinating, playing around with the toughness of creatures, which is an archetype that we have seen before, way in the past with Dorn the Siege Tower and such like that. So there, again, could be an argument that, like, is this really doing something that is a new or interesting archetype? I would actually say, though, yes, because we haven't seen that space visited in Abzan for quite a long time, and this feels to me like it is really developing way further into that space. Fellothar the Steadfast giving you the ability to deal damage with toughness, but also letting you draw so many extra cards based off of the toughness of your creatures is truly very, very wild. And just on that space alone, I'm like, okay, archetype, I am paying attention, and this feels so terrifically Abzan.
Yeah, Fellothar definitely feels like the best option if you're doing any sort of toughness matters type of theme, just moving forward. We've gotten a little bit, and you're right, we haven't really gotten a fully fleshed out version of toughness matters for a while. We got a little bit of it, like when we had Baldur's Gate, there were a few cards that cared, but nothing like this for sure. And yes, absolutely, it is digging into and really sinking its teeth into being what can toughness matters look like. And you have some new cards that are actually playing around with some really cool things you can do in that toughness matter space.
Yeah, truly, some of these, I didn't realize that I wanted this, is kind of how I feel about some of these cards. Like the card Jaws of Defeat is a very specific to this archetype card. Whenever a creature you control enters, target opponent loses life equal to the difference between their power and toughness.
What?
Yeah, just like, but what an inventive way to take defense and make it offense. I'm like, oh, okay, I am paying attention. Let's put some respect on this. I feel a lot of that way about much of what's going on here.
I actually think that the new cards might be the weakest point about the Fellothar deck, just because like there's some fine cards. I think Will of the Abzan is super sweet. I love that card. But maybe the weakest point in this one specifically is the new cards, because they are so specific to toughness matters type of decks. You can't really explore a whole lot outside of that type of strategy. But other than that, like, the deck is super sweet and it's cohesive. That's the coolest part about it, is you look at this like, yeah, this totally makes sense why every card is in here.
Yeah, I could certainly see that. This one of the new cards, they do feel a little bit more niche. They will not have quite as much broad appeal as maybe the stuff that we see in the other decks. But at the same time, this, as you said, cohesive, this feels fleshed out. This feels like what a toughness matters deck should look like, and I'm glad that it does. Especially this deck's reprints have me just like going, whoa, like a Dragonlord Dromoka, a Seedborn Muse, please sign me up. I'm delighted to see
Zatalpa
stuff
Primal
like
Dawn, yeah, we definitely need a reprint there.
Okay, the precons are still precons.
The precon's gonna precon, but you're right. There's a lot going on here, and it's even got a Seedborn Muse in there. Like, yeah, that was something that was totally needed in a precon deck.
It gives a Baldin reprint. All right, cool, go off. That feels exactly what I would want this deck to look like, especially because I feel like one of the interesting things about precons is that they do have to have some maintenance reprints, even if those cards aren't expensive when they are reprinted. If they weren't reprinted here, they would become expensive. And to that end, this deck has definitely covered its bases really, really well.
Well, and the next deck I want to talk about, Joey, is one that I'm not really sure what to make of it, but the people that I've seen talking about it who are super, super pumped to see this. And that's the Jeskai deck. It's led by Shiko and Narset Unified. It's the red, white, and blue decks. And this one, it's not quite Spellslinger, but it's all about making sure you cast more than one spell a turn. And that second spell you cast has to really, really matter.
Yeah, it being able to copy the second spell that you play is real cool. Here's the thing that, like, y'all know that I love my Golgari. I am not usually a Jeskai guy, but this one actually also intrigues me a lot too. Like, in terms of, is the archetype interesting? Caring about that flurry ability, the second spell that you play, this one caught my attention. It really did.
Sure.
What I like about this particular version of Spellslinger is that it's not doing some of the stuff that we see a lot of other Spellslinger decks do. The way that this is invented upon that archetype there is by capping it a little bit. This isn't Storm. There is actually a specific threshold that you meet, and that's enough, and it's good value. And that is, I think, a really wise move on the part of the designers here. So, like, that does actually, like, intrigue me. Like, okay, how much can I break it when it does have this ceiling? Is a fun space to be able to play around with.
But this deck definitely does seem like the type of deck, if you want to kind of break that ceiling, though, this is the deck to do it with, because Shiko and Narset Unified is super cool, getting to copy the second spell you cast. But the backup commander, Elsha Threefold Master, seems like a nightmare of a card. And I love having a ton of creatures on the battlefield, but giving them all prowess is such a headache. Oh my goodness. I've seen people excited for this. I don't know why, because I don't have a PhD in mathematics.
Yeah. I'll also say, like, it is funny. This is a deck that does have like Storm cards in it. And so like you can do some Storm. That capacity exists, but it doesn't feel like it is a must do. It doesn't feel like that is the expectation of the deck. And to that end, though, like some of the new cards, I again do find very enchanting here. The new Tempest technique is a Storm enchantment that buffs up the enchanted creature for each enchantment you control. So like an All That Glitters, but it copies itself if you have played multiple other spells that turn. So this feels befitting for exactly this type of strategy. It's an enchantment that is a payoff for a Storm type of strategy, and yet it also is the kind of thing that I'm like, do I have to keep my eye on this for future Enchantress decks that are doing Constellation stuff? And this is a whole bunch of enchantments entering, like.
Yeah, you do.
The new cards here do have my, gears grinded in my head. I'm like, oh, what's going on?
Well, and also too, I just have to give a quick LOL to this deck having an infinite combo put into the pre-constructed deck.
Yeah.
And like I understand designing decks is super hard, but it's just super funny. And for those of you who don't know what the combo is, the new card Adaptive Trading Post, it's 2 and a blue for an artifact that says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if this artifact has fewer than 3 charge counters on it, put a charge counter on it. Then you can remove 3 charge counters from this artifact, and then the next time you cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, you copy it and you choose new targets for the copy, which is cool and all because you have expansion/explosion in the deck, where the expansion side of the card is you can copy an instant or sorcery that has value 4 or less. So all you need to do is say you cast a Consider that puts the 3rd counter on Adaptive Trading Post. You take the 3 counters off to copy the next spell you cast expansion, copying the Consider. Well, you get an extra copy of expansion, and then you just get to keep copying the expansion and copying it. So if you have a card like, I don't know, Archmage Emeritus, which is also in the deck that gives you a Magecraft trigger, whenever you cast or copy a spell, you draw a card, you can just draw through your entire deck. Having that seems like a little bit of a fumble, but otherwise this deck does look super, super fun.
I'll say I think it takes a lot for you to get interested in Sultai and for me to get interested in Jeskai.
Yeah, fair.
And yet these precons are doing that, which is just like whoa, what's happening? But like that, I think just like speaks to a testament of like the cool stuff that these precons are able to do. I think if there is a weak point of any of the decks, this one does have the lowest reprint value. I think the reprint value on this one was roughly $138, which is on the low end of the average across the past year of precons. It sort of puts it in line with the reprint value of the Bloomburrow decks. But even then, the Bloomburrow decks, like most of those were like pretty decent. So like that's not the worst company to keep, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
I think there's a lot of potential for some of the new cards and some of the reprints to go back up, because you do have cards like Stormkiln Artist, which is always $5. So there's a lot of cards like that built in there. Some of these new cards too, though, I'm very, very curious how they're going to play outside of this, but like Caldera Pyramaw, holy cow.
That card's cracked. I love that card.
This is one of those cards that you cannot let somebody untap with. Otherwise, you might just be dead. Caldera Pyramaw is 3 red for a 3/3 dragon with flying. But the important ability is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a +1/+1 counter onto this creature, then this creature deals damage equal to its power to target opponent. So if I cast 5 or 6 spells, just because I cantrip out, I play Consider into a Ponder, into an Opt or whatever, somebody's just dead.
Chonk. Yeah. Well, and it's again a card that is versatile enough to be placed into maybe the odd dragon deck here and there if you want to make multiple copies of this and then really threaten people with, a bad time there. But also if you're playing a +1 counters deck and you just want to load this up and you cast a single instant or sorcery.
Like, that works too, yeah.
Like the cards here are representing quite a lot of versatility without them feeling like they are too broad. Like I'm not getting a Teferi's Protection, this goes everywhere type of vibe from any of these, but I'm also not necessarily feeling that any of these cards feel stuck to only one specific deck archetype necessarily. There's versatility here that is still restrained, and that is a thing I admire about card design. I think that's very, very cool. To go from the deck that has the smallest amount of reprint value, I'd love for us to go now to the deck that has the highest amount of reprint value, which is the Temur deck, which I think we can just boil down to calling this is the Temur Dragons deck.
It says Temur Roar, but dragons do roar. So I think that's a very, very fair assumption.
Yeah, a huge strength on this one is the reprint value is off the chain, fantastic. Dragon Tempest is the perfect card to put into this set. I'm so happy to see that one come down from its like $10 price tag or wherever it was. Selvala Stampede is yet another. Matt, I'm sure that you were happy to see a Temur Ascendancy.
Yeah, the reprints in this one are just gas. Yeah, Temur Ascendancy, Elemental Bond is an uncommon that somehow is like pushing $5-7 depending on where you get it from. The reprints alone are just super, super great in this Temur deck. Kind of wild. Dragon Tempest. There's so much value in here. I just cannot get over it. But also the new cards are super, super cool too. Not just Eshki Temur's War, which is the commander that's leading it, because that one has all sorts of fun things you can do with it too. But just the dragons in the 99, every dragon deck had something that benefits from this pre-constructed deck.
Yeah, Eshki is quite an interesting leader, the 3-mana 2/2 human warrior. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you put a +1 counter on Eshki, and if that spell's power is 4 or greater, so, cast big creatures, you'll draw a card, but if their power is 6 or greater, then Eshki will also deal damage equal to Eshki's power to each opponent. So again, you can just make this thing big, cast big creatures, and keep your hand full and deal a bunch of damage. I'm even finding myself, though, more interested in Ureni of the Unwritten, the backup commander here, which is a 7-mana, 7/7 spirit dragon with flying and trample whenever it enters or attacks. Whenever it enters or attacks, Matt.
Or attacks, yes.
Look at the top 8 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Just a Temur Dragon that comes with friend.
Temur Dragon is going to Temur Dragon. I love Ureni of the Unwritten. We talked about it a little bit last week when Dane and I were talking about building creature type decks. Ureni of the Unwritten just seems so much fun.
And so not just the commanders, but also the cards in the 99, there are a bunch of new dragons that I think every dragon player out there does need to, take a minute to ponder. Dragons are a competitive creature type. That's a competitive field.
Yeah.
But when I see Broodcaller Scourge, the 7-mana 5/7 green dragon with flying that says whenever your dragons deal damage to a player, you can put a permanent with mana value less than or equal to that damage from your hand onto the battlefield. Elvish Piper, but make it dragon when you hit people. That's wild. That's amazing. Or Parapet Thrasher, which is giving you tons of benefits when your dragons hit people. Those are also really enchanting, really fantastic. So we love the reprints here. The price on this deck is the best of the bunch. The new cards are also very intriguing to an extremely popular archetype. That leaves the question of whether this archetype is actually inventive. But here's the thing, Matt. It's dragons.
You don't need to be dragon. You don't need to do something inventive in dragons. Dragons might be the most tried and true creature type in all of Magic, maybe just fantasy in general. You can just add a dragon, and more likely than not, it's going to be way more interesting. They did it with the Hobbit trilogy. They added a dragon and made it more interesting because that trilogy needed help. But really,
I was going to say the Hobbit trilogy might be a really bad comparison, actually.
I know, but still, dragons are it's so much fun. Joey, you were talking about Broodcaller Scourge. What if you put Ureni of the Unwritten, move to combat, get to attack with Ureni, cheat out a Broodcaller Scourge, then you go do combat damage and deal damage with Ureni. That seems like so much fun. And every Timmy out there like me is just giddy looking at this deck because it's not doing anything fancy, but the reprints are there. The new cards are just absolute bangers. It just looks like such a fun deck to pilot just because you get to just turn things sideways and go smash.
I'm going to say one last thing on our evaluation here of is the archetype interesting?
Yes.
This archetype, not just dragons, but Temur Dragon specifically, is one of the most competitive spaces to try and have a new contender enter the ring because of Miirym Sentinel Worm.
Yep.
The Baldur's Gate Temur Dragon that is ranked number 10 across all commanders that exist. That is the 10th most popular commander out there with 22,592 decks to its name at the current time of recording. And here's, I think, the reason why I'm so excited for this Temur Dragons deck is because I would love to see Miirym get unseated. I'm just you need to have some competition. Miirym, you're too much. I would love to see you have to maybe fight to keep that space on the throne. That actually is intriguing to me here for this particular archetype. It could use a bit more competition, actually.
I would love more competition. I think if you're trying to do things absolutely tuned and trying to make those bracket 3, bracket 4, this is optimized type of dragon deck where I'm playing just the best dragons out there, then Miirym Sentinel Worm probably is still the best. But if you're just trying to do the big over the top silly things and you need a substitution for Miirym that isn't going to draw just all the attention from the rest of the table, Ureni the Unwritten probably is the best option. You get to do big, powerful things that every dragon wants to do, every dragon deck wants to do, I should say. But yeah, this just like, it's so much fun. The fun factor on the Temur deck here, probably the highest that I've been more excited for this deck than anything for a while.
Well, and Matt, that brings us to the final one here, the Mardu deck.
Yeah.
This Mardu mobilization, all of these tokens when you're attacking, very much a myriad sub-theme within this deck of like when you're attacking, you're going to make sure that you are stretching the tokens to hit many people at once if possible. A little bit of an aristocrat's flair in there too. Also, when looking at our list of questions, is the archetype inventive? I mean, we've seen Mardu tokens before. It is like, we saw Caesar and we've seen Ishin do attack trigger stuff. But here it's done so well. And frankly, the focus on Myriad has me like, okay, I'm paying attention once again. When I'm looking at the interesting new cards, this might have my favorite new cards of the bunch.
Oh, favorite new cards and favorite reprints. There's some really fun cards in it. Like, this deck goes so wide it needs 2 seatbelts to sit down. This thing is so much fun. You're making so many tokens. Whether you're using some of the new cards, like, I really like Within Range. That card seems so cool.
I'm so mad at you for mentioning Within Range because that was the thing that I was going to go to as well.
Did I beat you to it? Oh,
yeah.
But it's rad. It's a super cool card.
When you attack your opponents, for each creature that's attacking that opponent, they're going to lose that much life right off the bat.
And it makes two 1/1s. It gives you fuel to do that attack trigger. And then when you combine that with something like Legion Loyalty, which is a great reprint, it's maybe not like the most price-wise best reprint, but from a fun factor and how it plays well into this sub-theme of the Myriad, of just going wide and getting all these attack triggers in place, Legion Loyalty is such a cool, just go over-the-top card. It's just a great top-end type of thing to just slot into these pre-constructed decks.
Well, Matt, especially when you pair it with the new card Redoubled Stormsinger, which will double up your myriadness. Whenever this creature attacks, for each creature token that you control that hit the field that turn, you'll create a tapped and attacking version of that token for that. That's so cool. Like, double my myriad. Don't mind if I do. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, there's just so many cool and fun new cards. And I know we've said this about literally every single deck, but that doesn't mean it's not true either. That just means that they've did a just smash it out of the park. Great job with designing all 5 of these decks, because we haven't even talked about the commanders yet for the Mardu deck, whether it's Zurgo Stormrender, which is the face commander there. You get it's 3 mana, a red, a white, and a black for a 3/3 legendary orc warrior with mobilize 1, which is an attack trigger. Whenever you attack, you create that many, so whatever the mobilize number is, you create that many 1/1 red warrior creature tokens that come in attacking, and then you sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. So if it's mobilize 1, you create 1. If it's mobilize 3, you make 3 tokens, etc. But then Zurgo also has the ability, whenever a creature token you control leaves the battlefield, draw a card if it was attacking. Otherwise, each opponent loses 1 life. So either you're sacrificing a token and pinging them for 1, or if they block your 1/1s and they kill it, you get to draw a card.
That ability is unreasonable for 3 mana.
It's so good.
If anything, this is the commander that I'm the most afraid of. Like, okay, I'm going to wipe the board. Oh, shoot. If I wipe the board, I might die because all their tokens are going to deal much damage to me. Or when they're attacking me with a whole bunch of stuff, all right, I'll block a couple of their little chump tokens there. Shoot, they're going to draw so many cards if I do that.
Oh, yeah.
This is punishing. You got to get Zurgo off the field ASAP. ASAP, yes. The correct time is ASAP.
Yeah, another one of those creatures that you just can't let them untap. You can't let them get through a combat step. I feel really bad. I saw Zurgo Stormrender and I immediately thought, well, shoot, now I have to build a second Heir Apparent deck, because that's just the perfect commander for Heir Apparent decks. And oh my gosh, anything that likes to go wide, Zurgo is just going to do so stinking well. And yeah, we talked about Ishin. You can put Zurgo in the Ishin deck or Ishin in the Zurgo deck, because it's just going to feed off of each other so stinking well.
There are so many cards that I think complement each other really well here. This is the deck that has the cards that I'm most interested in seeing in other aggro spaces. Like, Matt, I've seen you find your way into a 20 power red creature before, and I know that you're not just going to put a Reaver Cleaver onto it to make a bunch of mana off of that from the treasures of the power there. You also want the new infantry shield to give that creature mobilize equal to its power, so that you're making tokens when it attacks based off of how big it is. I know that that's going to happen to me, and I'm like I accept my fate at this point, you know? Like
I love it when you make me feel seen, Joey. Infantry Shield is so great. You sent that to me when it was first previewed, and I love it. I'm going to put it in a couple decks probably. But yeah, Infantry Shield is great. And that's just, there's so many cards in here that just, again, we're going to gush about this for a little bit, but they play in together so stinking well. And Joey, I know you have a commander deck where every single card has to reference the commander.
Yes.
You have cards like Anok Strike Leader now. You have all the will cards. There's a ton of gas for that deck of yours.
I made that deck almost as a meme.
It's not a meme anymore, though.
It's not a meme, Matt. It's not a meme at all. The idea of the deck is a very heavy restriction that I even apply to the lands in my deck, where every card must say commander on it. And I thought, that maybe I'll change up a card or two here whenever they reprint another, when they give me a new lieutenant here and there, which is pretty rare. Well, in this deck alone, there's like 4 cards or whatever. Iron Will Forger, as you mentioned, Inok Strike Leader, those both mention your commanders and give you benefits for your commander being in play. The entire new will cycle, as you said as well. Like, I did not expect to have to make 7 cuts and adds and changes to that deck. I did not expect to have to overhaul it. I ain't mad, but like, I'm astonished to see the development here, and I'm scared of what those cards can do, not just in my own deck, but in an aggressive deck like this one. So I think I personally have my eyes most on the Mardu deck, because these cards, I think, are punching the hardest with its newest offerings.
For sure.
The reprints are solid. The archetype is explored very, very thoroughly, and the new cards are stunning.
Yeah. Well, so we have a fourth question that we asked about these. How do you think that these are going to play well together? Joe, have you gotten a chance to watch anybody playing them or playing them yourself? Because it's so hard to see if one of these is going to go head and shoulders above the other 4, because they all look so good.
This is the other thing for it too. When it gets to our final question, how do they play in the Biodome with each other? I've been voraciously consuming content about this, and thankfully there are a lot of channels that are going over, playing these precons against each other, and it's been a blast every dang time. If there's any deck that I think tends to be the driver of the narrative, you might say, it does seem to be the Mardu deck that is doing most of the okay, let's put the pressure on here. So I think if there's one that catches my attention the most, that might be why. But I don't think it takes over. I don't think it is dominating in the way that we have seen some other precon pods in the past be like. I'll think back to the OTJ decks. One of the reasons that I didn't necessarily care for all of them was because the Stella Lee deck felt so strong to me compared to, I feel like it was really difficult for the Gonti deck to stand up in that ring necessarily. I love the Lord of the Rings set. I really do. But that elf deck did not stand much of a chance, I think, in that ring. No. Compared to here, the 5 decks, I'm really intrigued by the offerings, and I'm not yet seeing a thing where it feels like only one deck dominates.
Well, and it kind of goes back to the episode that Dana and I did a few weeks ago, where every deck falls into an archetype, whether it's aggro, whether it's control, mid-range, or some sort of combo deck too. You can look at these decks, and every single deck falls into a different category. You're right, the Mardu deck probably comes out swinging the hardest. It is definitely the aggressor when it comes to that conversation, whereas the Temur Roar deck, it's going to be a mid-range deck and ramp up to this big splashy turn, so you're just cranking out dragons. The Abs and Armor, a little bit kind of like that too, whereas the Sultai Arisen deck, definitely control deck. It takes its time, it sets up, controls the board a little bit, and then the Jeskai Striker deck, just out of nowhere, I'm going to do this big explosive turn that just wins games.
Yeah, these are nice dynamics to exist. They feel proper, and they also just touch on some of our favorite things about the plane of Tarkir in general. So I think that is probably one last thing that is worth saying here. It isn't just that the decks and the cards all look interesting together. Also, this feels like such a terrific magic set compared to a lot of the other stuff that we've been getting over time. And so it's been so lovely to see in conversations with people going to a game store, just folks are so excited about look how magic-y this feels. And that's another key ingredient here that I think also kind of has us feeling like it resonates so strongly.
After so many sets that either are Universes Beyond or feel Universes Beyond, having a magic set that feels like an authentic magic set, it's just super refreshing. It's the same reason I really, really loved Foundations. I'm having that same feeling where this just feels right when it comes to looking at every card in the main set and the pre-constructed decks. I'm absolutely loving everything that I see from the Dragonstorm precons.
So, okay, Matt, what we've been doing here for a minute is we've been gushing.
We have been, yes.
Like, we're clearly very excited about this for all those reasons that we said. Like, there are many things about this set of precons that are very intriguing and enchanting to us. But up at the top of the show, you had actually said, like, yeah, this has got to be one of the best precon sets of all time. And I want us to really dig into whether that is true. We've gone over some points of how we evaluate precons, but are these the best precons of all time? Is this the best precon set? How does it compare to some other really big standout precon sets of the past? That is a question that I think we also really ought to give a fair shake. But we can't do it yet because we've been talking for so long that we forgot to challenge the stats, buddy.
we have. We've been going for a while. Let's get some challenge stats in real quick, and then we'll get back and answer that question of, is this actually the best pre-constructed set of all time?
This episode is brought to you by Archidekt. Archidekt is our favorite deck building website of choice, and if you're familiar with our Upping the Average series on YouTube, you'll know I've been a big fan of this site for years now. Archidekt is full of features that can take all the hassle out of deck building online. For instance, did you know you can drag and drop cards from either EDHREC or Scryfall right into Archidekt, and it will add those cards to your deck for you? Whenever I brew, I already have a bunch of searches on EDHREC and Scryfall open in other tabs anyway, so literally just clicking and dragging cards right into my deck list saves me so much time. That way I don't have to type out every single dang card name. Not only that, but they also have a great system for you to create packages of cards too. If there's a group of cards that you know you're going to add to more than one deck, say a list of staples or favorite ramp effects, a counterspell or combo suite that you really enjoy and that you want to build around in more than just one list, or even just a group of pet cards, whatever the case may be, you can save those groups of cards as packages and easily add them to your decks when you're brewing. Or even browse through other package ideas that other users have come up with. Archidekt makes being a deck architect a total breeze. Check them out at archidekt.com. This episode is also brought to you by Spellify. Spellify is a hilarious magic card guessing game over on the website Commander's Herald. This game shows you a card but with all the text and art removed, and you can guess letters to fill in the blanks to try and identify what that card is. Think of it like Wordle, but with magic cards. See if you can guess the card by using as few letters as possible, just by recognizing how many letters are in its name or based on its activation costs and things like that, or see if you can guess it by not filling in any blanks at all. Real power move right there. There's even a Spellify hard mode for those extra daring aficionados out there. And of course, whenever you're done playing, Spellify's host site, Commander's Herald, is a great place to catch up on some of the spicy magic news of the day too. I know a lot of big names in Magic have been having a blast guessing the card of the day, so if you want to join in and have a little fun while you do, enjoy testing out your magic prowess over on Spellify. All right, I'll get us started here with our listener-submitted Challenge the Stats of the week. And this one comes to us from our Discord member, Sean Chef Mutant, who was really excited to share one of the coolest challenges that we've seen in a while, a very underplayed card for those of you out there playing Onyxia, Hand of Erebos, an Abzan commander from Commander Masters a while back. Onyxia is a legendary enchantment creature demigod with menace that also gives your other enchantment creatures menace. And whenever Onyxia enters or attacks, you exile up to one target non-aura enchantment card from your graveyard, and you create a token that is a copy of that card, except that it is a 3/3 black zombie creature in addition to its other types. So you can fetch enchantments out of your graveyard, turn them into creatures, and Onyxia will give them a little bit of evasion for you. One of the most important enchantments that you might want to start prioritizing getting out of the graveyard and turning into a creature for Onyxia to grant menace is a card that Sean is submitting as very underplayed, the card Familiar Ground, a 3-mana green enchantment that says each creature you control can't be blocked by more than one creature. So when this is in play, if Onyxia has got it in play, or if you turned it into a 3/3 or whatever, if you've got this effect going on and Onyxia simultaneously is giving all of your stuff menace, that basically means that your creatures can't be blocked. Your enchantment creatures are now unblockable. And since Onyxia has an attack trigger, Sean is pointing out that you really want her to be safe in combat. And this gives you permission to attack without any risk over and over and over again. Sean, when you ask, how is this not one of the first cards in every Onyxia deck? How is this only showing up in 3.8% of Onyxia decks out there right now? I don't know how it's that underplayed here. I totally agree with you that this card should see way more play for this commander. What a specialized, fantastic pick. Y'all, let's fix the numbers here. 3.8% of Enigthea decks. That number needs to be way higher. Familiar Ground is a very cool pick for this. Sean, thank you so much for submitting it. I love this challenge so much.
Okay, so Joey, I know that we've been gushing a lot about Mardu and all these pre-constructed decks that we're going to see in Dragonstorm. So I'm going to talk about we're going to shift gears a little bit and Zergo Stormrender again. Why not? So we've gotten a little bit of data about Zergo Stormrender so far, and Dolmen Gate isn't really a cheap card anymore. It's $20+. We can't really suggest it in good faith to say every deck should be playing this. But if you do want that same effect where it kind of frees up your ability to attack into maybe not necessarily the best situation, but you just need those attack triggers, another card that is only a couple dollars that I think you actually want to be playing a little bit more is the card Reconnaissance. So it's an enchantment that we've talked about several times. I feel like we've challenged this card at least a couple times in the 300 plus episodes that we've been doing this. But Reconnaissance is an enchantment for 1 white mana that says pay 0 mana to activate it, remove target attacking creature you control from combat and untap it, which means you can do it before a bad blocking situation. Say you have to attack, but you don't want that creature to get blocked and die. Well, use Reconnaissance to pull that back out of combat, keep your creature safe while getting those attack triggers. But also it's a good way, just you give your creatures pseudo vigilance as well, because there's a cleanup step at the end of the combat step. So you can tap your creatures because they have to attack, and then after they've dealt the damage, activate Reconnaissance, pull them out of combat, get them untapped. It's a great way. It's a nice little combat trick that players who used to play Legacy back in the day absolutely love, but it's something that still applies and is powerful in Commander in 2025. So if you're looking for a nice budget alternative for all these attack matters type of Commander decks you're going to be building, Reconnaissance is absolutely a card that you want to keep in mind. It hasn't really been reprinted all that much either. I don't know how it's still only $2, so hopefully it doesn't go up too much with all these players latching onto it in these new decks they're building.
I was so grateful for this one getting a reprint for the first time ever in like the Assassin's Creed set, which was not a particularly successful set. But the reason I was so grateful for the reprint was because this version of the card actually like clarifies that cool rules thing that you were just saying, where you can attack with the creature, it deals damage, and then before you move away from combat, that creature is still considered attacking, so you can remove it from combat, untap it, give it that pseudo vigilance. The new version actually clarifies why that is possible compared to the old version of the card, which is gaslighting the player. And it says that creature won't deal any damage. Like, it was when combat rules were a little bit different. So the new version of the card actually does like clarify a little bit that yes, this is a thing that is allowable within the rules, even if it's not intuitive. Thank you for the new version. Wizards, maybe we could even get another new version that isn't just in the Assassin's Creed-averse. Maybe we should reprint this card more often because as Matt's pointing out, it's a gnarly card. It's real good. This thing's very powerful.
It's a super powerful card, and I'm very excited it gets to exist. And again, with these pre-constructed decks, there's going to be a lot more attention given to attack matters type of decks.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just only makes sense to get some more copies out there.
Yeah. A very good card to have on your radar. I'm glad that you pointed that one out. So Matt, that brings us now into that really big question of this episode. Are these 5 decks, these new Tarkir Dragonstorm decks, are they actually the best precons of all time? Is this the best precon set that we've ever had? You were very gung-ho about this. You seem very committed and not at all biased that this definitely is the case.
The inner Timmy in me is definitely not at all biased. But so I do genuinely think that this might be, if it is not, it has to be in the conversation. Everything just top to bottom, all the cards that are included, for all the reasons we talked about. We just spent 40 minutes talking about why we think that the Dragonstorm pre-constructed decks are just absolutely powerful and just some of the best designed. But there are some contenders out there that need to be in the conversation too that, Joey, I think you might disagree that they're the best ever, but man, it's a really tight competition.
It is hard. Like when you put that forward, I was just like, yeah, like those are the noises I was making in my head. Like it might be. And I then did have to go through to try and ask myself, like, all right, if this isn't the best set of precons, what is? What are the possible contenders that I would put up to be eligible for that title, for that crown? And there are a handful of names that stick out to me, a handful of like precon sets that jump out. And I'm interested to hear yours as well. I do want to clarify before I say any, I'm going to go for a full set of like at least 4 precons. It can't just be a set that had 2 decks. It has to be like at least 4 decks, a biodome that you can play against each other. And so some of the ones that immediately stick out to me, I would say, are the Strixhaven decks.
Yep.
Those ones with Osgear, with the Lorehold, with doing Quandrix, like all of those, I think that is a very, very strong contender for me personally. I think maybe even the new Modern Horizons decks are also up there somewhere in the conversation potentially.
Yeah.
And I immediately know what that breath is. I know exactly where you're at with that. The price on them is a big factor against them. I'm not going to lie.
The price on them is a big factor, but also Modern Horizons, it's not that they weren't super good decks, but you're right. The price on them, and also they were meant to be head and shoulders above.
Yeah.
The design was meant to be overly powerful just because of the nature of what Modern Horizons was supposed to do as a set.
Yes.
And so when the whole set is meant to be overly powerful compared to a mainline standard legal set, there's a lot of factors that go into, like, yes, technically, but in the spirit of the conversation, I struggle to say Modern Horizons 3 was the best because, the price absolutely matters compared to all these other sets.
Yeah, I think the reason that those two initially stood out to me, Strixhaven and Modern Horizons, is because of one of those, the first criteria that we named about like inventive archetypes. And on the archetype side, that is where Modern Horizons was so strong.
Yes, you're right there.
The Omo deck, the lands matter, that like what a crazy cool space to look into. A Tarmogoyf deck, people clearly loved the crap out of that one. Like it was playing around in fun and friendly spaces. And that is also why Strixhaven stands out to me so strongly, because like it reinvented Boros, and that was a huge turn.
Yeah. I see where you like Strixhaven, because even just what it was able to do for Boros. Granted, I mean, the Izzet deck was the most Izzet deck to ever Izzet.
It's true.
My problem with a lot of these, going through all these sets, is even when you look at some of the highlights, so many of these sets have like one dud deck. There's one deck that maybe just didn't keep up,
right?
And so it's really hard. And Modern Horizons 3 didn't really have that problem, but again, they were meant to push the limits in every sense of the word, which is why, it's really hard to say the Eldrazi deck wasn't just a monster of a deck, but that was the whole point.
Yeah, there are, I think we joked about Lord of the Rings earlier. Like, Lord of the Rings probably would be your best precon set of all time.
It would be up there, yeah.
Were it not for the fact that the Elf deck is a little bit clumsy right out of the gate.
Yeah, but all the other decks do play super well together too, which is it just thinks that the Elf deck, because all the other four, you could play those in a pod all day long, have a ton of fun, and the Elf deck is just kind of like the stepbrother, like, hey, I'm here, guys.
Oh no. I think that this is the kind of thing that we've seen be the case for several. I mentioned the Stella Lee thing as well. That felt like one of the most lopsided precon pods I've ever played.
Yeah.
The Gonzi deck feels like very, very difficult when you're stealing everyone else's stuff to make all of those disparate strategies become cohesive.
Yeah.
Or I really enjoyed the Duskmourn decks a lot. Duskmourn surprised me how much I enjoyed that set.
Sure.
I think in that Precon Biodome, the Amanatu Veilpiercer deck struggled to keep up with how powerful, like right at the start of the game, the other three decks could be. So like I've seen a lot of that case that you were saying of like, there's one sort of dud that keeps me from nominating these as like, oh, I can't wait to play this Biodome again. So yeah, that is a fault that is certainly worth mentioning.
And like, there's a lot of really good sets that could have been mentioned more if it weren't for that one dud deck. I actually think the Bloomborough precons were super good. The 3 of the 4 totally playable. You could have a good time with them. You had the Bumbleflower deck, you had Bellow, which those 2 decks are just super powerful in general. But the Squirrel deck, the Golgari Squirrel deck, I think actually did a fine job at doing what it set out to do. But the Family Matters deck it kind of fumbled. It didn't really do all that well and just could not keep up with the other 3 decks.
It had the most room for upgrades, is I think the way that I'll name it.
That's the best way to say that deck sucked.
No, I don't think because I don't think it sucked. I think it is very interesting, very inventive, a cool space to take Jeskai. I do think though that it had stiff competition. So yeah,
it did.
To go on that point of like what maybe prevents us from naming some of those sets where individual decks have really impressed us. There were occasionally moments where like I wish I could like the entire thing, but there was one thing that got a C-.
There's so many sets that stick out there. I think one set that I will genuinely say probably could be in the running for the best overall Biodome best setting is the 40K, the Warhammer 40K precons. All of those were on such level ground.
Okay.
They were super fun to play. I had a chance to play all those against each other. The problem with that one, though, is it was so hard to get to them that not enough people got to experience the 40k precons as they were out of the box. But that one, the Tyranids deck, it was inventive. It was still doing +1/+1 counters, but was doing a lot of X-Spells along with that. You had the Demons deck. You had the Esper Humans. You had mono black artifacts. Like, there was a lot of innovation. There was a ton of new cards, and the reprints were juicy too. So I really, really want to give Warhammer 40k a lot of credit, but it was so hard to get a hold of, and that's the worst part.
That's so interesting. For me, the way that those decks play against each other, I felt a little bit less impressed by the Abaddon the Despoiler deck compared to how monumentally impressed I was by the mono black Necron deck.
The Necron deck was very good, yeah.
I'd like genuinely, that might be one of my contenders for one of the best precons of all time. That Necron deck is
really
insane to me.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's truly fantastic because a lot of the inventiveness that you were mentioning there. And so, Warhammer, I'm happy to give it its kudos here, but to me, it doesn't quite enter into the conversation quite as much as some of the other big standouts.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is just for my way of saying that, Matt, I ultimately end up agreeing with your thesis that, these new Tarkir Dragon decks actually do still take the top spot over some of these examples.
Okay, so I do want to throw out there actually was a sleeper set that I don't think it is truly the winner, but one that was surprisingly good that nobody remembers was actually a really good precon environment. But March of the Machines was actually pretty dang good if you disregard the dud in Tinker Time, which was that Teamer. I don't know what it was trying to do. It wasn't doing it very well. But
Gimbal,
the rest of the decks in March of Machines, the precon set, those were a ton of fun. And a deck that I actually have in my list for best individual decks, that Growing Threat, the black and white deck helmed by the black and white Brimmas, was a ton of fun.
A surprising pick, Matt. It's nice to see the praise that you've put onto the Brimaz deck. To me, I didn't quite have the same level of engagement with it. It felt more difficult for me to access. I don't know, that's just my taste in tea, though, probably, because when I do look at what is that deck doing that has never been done before, it's near the top of the pile. So I definitely see what intrigued you so much there. It feels like what you enjoyed so much about there was the archetype inventiveness. Like, that was clearly not a thing that we had seen done in black and white before. It was really playing in a brand new space. And so that was refreshing to see. And there are, I totally agree, some standouts from within the March of the Machine decks. I can't ignore the Tinker Time deck with Gimbal is the problem. That does drag it down a lot for me. So there were some more than a couple moments in that suite of decks that felt very haphazard to me. I'm happy with you saying it's an underrated set, but I do still rate it low, even if you think I'm underrating it.
The Tinker Time was pretty bad, but then if you look at, you had the Knights deck, the Esper Knights with Sardar Jabari of Zhalfir, which was a great deck. You also had the Jeskai Convoke deck, which was actually nice to have a Jeskai precon that was done well and unique at the same time. There was a lot of stuff to like from that set, but again, I like I said, I'm not offering March of the Machines as a front runner, but I think it was a sleeper pick because it did 3 decks very, very well in all the boxes you want it to be checking.
Maybe some other sleeper hits that I would throw out there as well. The Baldur's Gate set of precons, I remain impressed by to this day. Barakos Party Time deck, I did not expect to fall in love with Barakos, but here I am. I've been playing Barakos for a while, and I quite enjoy, like, when I see people playing Nagathrod or decks like that, I'm just like, yeah, you know what, that deck is really, really interesting. They had an Is It Goad deck, and I'm like, all right, cool. It felt like it was hitting a lot of the right notes. I certainly won't say that it's one of the best of all time, but I do think, like, I would label the Baldur's Gate set of precons as a sleeper hit. Another one that I do think could potentially be in contention for best precon set of all time, though, are the C16 decks, the 4-color decks.
Wow, throwback.
Those supercharged quite a lot, and like, even Atraxa's continual dominating presence at the top of the EDHREC charts, those were transformative on the format. Them even inventing the partner mechanic, which maybe is not the healthiest mechanic to ever exist in the world.
Contentious mechanic there,
it's a little bit powerful, but at the same time, the way that those had an impact on the game of Commander did feel like a turning point to me, so I feel like I have to put those in as well.
That definitely is a very, very good argument. My only concern is if you introduce them now, would they have that same impact?
Do they hold up?
They maybe might have been ahead of their time, but that doesn't mean that in context, though, they weren't immensely powerful. They changed the landscape of the format. Atraxa being one of the most popular commanders of all time and has been since it was released. You cannot take away the monumental impact and shift that C16 had. Even when you're talking about the good aspects of it, and then when you talk about Partner and just what Partner did to all of Commander and still continues to do to this day, I don't know if it was maybe the best pre-constructed setting, but it was the most impactful. Absolutely had a massive impact that cannot be taken away.
I like that distinction there. That makes quite a lot of sense. Like, because one of the things that does make a set feel like one of the best is that it doesn't feel like it broke stuff. And I think it is fair to say that maybe the C16 deck broke a handful of things here and there. That is
Partner
fair.
definitely broke a few things here and there.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more than broken.
Yeah, okay, that is certainly fair. I like a lot of these nominees, a lot of these candidates of these full sets of precons. I think I ultimately, like, if I have to, like, final deliberation right in this moment and going over the questions that we were looking at earlier with the new reprints, the new interesting cards, are the archetypes imaginative? When I boil things down, the new Tarkir set is definitely in contention. Like, it is so close to replacing my top spot. Mm-hmm. But I do think that I might still boil it down to Strixhaven is still probably my number one precon set of all time, even if this new patch is so close. And so, like, going through the reasons why.
Explain yourself. Yeah, get to that point, Joey.
You're so dubious, Matt.
I am.
So going through them, the archetypes I thought were fantastic. It reinvented Boros, giving it the lore hold. I found the Brina deck also doing a little bit of that politicking in an interesting way. I found those very, very engaging, very entertaining. Golgari Life Gain, like, they were playing around in some new spaces in a way that I thought they did them really, really well. I thought they did them justice.
Yeah.
The reprints were maybe the weakest point across the full set of decks, but they still helped bring down the prices of cards like Azuri's Predation, Hellkite Tyrant, 1,000-Year Elixir, and at the time, many of those cards were like $15 or $20. So even if it doesn't have the best longevity in terms of its reprints, I think, like, some of the moments that it did hit there were still pretty important. And the new designs I thought were also interesting. Matt, I know that you like a pest infestation, for instance.
I do love a pest. Yeah.
Let's also not forget, this is the set that brought us Inkshield, and Inkshield, quite a mighty addition to the format as well.
Such a fun card.
Yeah, showing up in 6% of decks that can play it. And, like, again, you're getting above that 3% threshold is honestly pretty dang impressive because there's a lot of cards out there. So,
well, and a lot of those new cards, that's kind of what everybody really got drawn into Strixhaven with. So yeah, I don't think that you can give enough credit to the new cards that did come out in Strixhaven, because they did push a lot of really cool boundaries. And there's all sorts of staples. And I know Cursed Mirror has become one of the most played mana rocks that was introduced in these decks. And I want to reinforce your point, Joey, about what it did to Boros with the Lorehold deck. It absolutely took it out of that shell of, okay, well, it's Boros. How are we going to do Boros equipment again? And it finally made a way for that red and white color combination to care about artifacts in a different way. So all you need to say to convince me that Strixhaven was a solid set is just say they made Boros interesting and not equipment focused. Like, that's all you need to say right there.
Fair enough. But I do think that the other stuff it offered was still interesting and comprehensive, and that there wasn't just one standout. And, like, you mentioned Cursed Mirror, and that card is showing up in 5% of decks that are eligible to play it out there, which is pretty high for a 3-mana colored mana rock. It's showing up in 145,000 decks out there. Some of the new cards, I think, really stand the test of time. But really, one of the final points that is make or break for why I would pick Strixhaven is, like, it is maybe the most fun I've ever had playing Magic, is just playing those precons out the box right against each other.
Fair.
It is so wild. Even playing that Zephi deck. I've played that Zephi deck, and it was able to create at least 10 of those 4/4 elemental tokens every single turn, despite being board wiped 3 times. I was like, what am I doing with, like, this is great. Like, I've had so much joy from that particular set of precons. So I do think that Strixhaven, I still give it that title, I think. But but, like, dang it, these new decks are really interesting and awesome too, and I do want them, and I want to just play them against each other endlessly, because all these new Tarkir stuff it feels like coming home. So, like, this is a hard choice, but that title is like, that I haven't given the crown over, but it's a hard choice.
It's a hard choice, but I don't think there's a wrong choice either. Because you're right, Joey. I absolutely, Strixhaven has a lot going on there. I think the Simic deck for me was kind of that dud once again, where it was just kind of doing Simic things. But every other reason that you've mentioned, it was doing so much innovative. Like you said, black-white politics. It was doing a lot of things that were super cool, even if it was maybe treaded ground with, is it in spell slinging? But I really do think if people got their hands on the 40K decks more often, I think it might have a better reputation for how many people got to play it. I absolutely fell in love with playing those decks against each other. It was a ton of fun. The environment was great. Yes, there was one deck that was maybe slower, but it still had that top end power of what the other decks were doing with the Abaddon deck that you mentioned, the Grixis Demons. But again, the archetypes were super fun. There was a lot of powerful new cards. There were great reprints. It checks all those boxes. So but either way, I'm glad that you and I both have at least a substitute to compare what Tarkir Dragonstorm is, because that way we listeners out there, we're serious when we're saying these other historically great pre-constructed environments. Dragonstorm is looking just as good, if not maybe better, once we get a chance to actually play with these cards.
This does kind of beg the question. We've been talking, most of this conversation, we've wanted to focus on like the full set, because occasionally a set of precons comes out there that does have a dud.
Yep.
Tinker Time. Hi, Gimbal. I have issues with you.
Tinker Time especially, yes.
Yeah, that elf deck from Lord of the Rings, girl, what happened? But I think it is also still fair for us to take a look, though, at not just a full set. I am kind of curious, going by some of these metrics that we've gone over, what your favorite individual decks are as well.
Ooh.
Like, are there some standouts, and how does this new offering from Tarkir compare to like maybe an individual best precon of all time, do you think?
Well, let's get the easy ones out of the way. The Eldrazi deck, it feels like cheating saying that from Modern Horizons 3. That deck was intentionally meant to be above and beyond what the normal pre-constructed deck was. Stella Lee from Thunder Junction, up there, it stood out, man. Maybe that's just because the competition in Thunder Junction wasn't all that great. But decks that I truly think were very good on their own merits. Miss Bumbleflower, probably just the wildest deck that I've seen. It had a lot of innovation. It was doing group hug, but using that to its own advantage instead of just giving out resources like sometimes a group hug deck can do. It still had a mission, and there was new cards in there. A lot of the reprints were super valuable too. I really think Bumbleflower is worth a shout.
Agree with Bumbleflower. I'll even put Bellow potentially in contention there too.
Yeah.
That raccoon is a messed up card. He's really, really good. He paunchy, and there's a lot of defense. It's hard to wrath that board because they're just enchantments until you play Bellow, and now they're hitting you and drawing you.
And now you're dead. Yeah.
And now you're dead. Yeah.
The Tyranids deck from Warhammer 40K.
Oh, really?
That deck just it overran everything. I of all the decks we played in that pre-constructed deck, or in that pre-constructed environment, I should say, everybody had a chance, but it always just seemed like the Tyrannid deck just did just enough if we didn't answer it, that it would just run away with the game. And so there was a lot going on there. But yeah, I would say either the Miss Bumbleflower deck, maybe the Tyranids deck, maybe Stella Lee, outside of like the Black White Brimmis deck that I did mention earlier. Those I would say are some of my best pre-constructed decks that just stand out in my mind.
Okay. It's from the Warhammer. I think I had mentioned before, the one that stood out to me was the Necron Dynasty deck, the mono black deck.
Mono black artifacts, yeah.
Which, you know what? Is Joey? He's biased. He plays a lot of black. I understand. I get it. I see myself. Everyone out there.
I did play the Necron Dynasty deck for myself, Joey, and you are right. Like, it was a super fun deck. It was doing a lot of creative things. So I see why it's so high on your list, because it does do a lot of things that we ask from these questions. It had some really cool new cards. The new commanders well, you had to play the face commander for sure. The backup commander didn't slot in so well, but the face commander was just absolutely a house.
And I also think like the archetype that it explored with like not just the artifacts, but also the vehicle of it all, and the reviving of the vehicles, felt like it was laying some runway for like Greasefang to start doing Greasefang things. Like I continually find cards from that deck where I'm just like, dang, you really were pulling a lot of like, all right, cool. This is a fun space to have been in for a while. So like that one is actually up there for me from the Warhammer offerings, but others that also stand out to me, the Party Time deck, the Barakos of it all. Again, a bias here. That's a deck that I now have. I didn't expect to fall in love with it. So,
yeah.
But I do think that just like it is frankly very, very powerful. That trigger is not difficult to set up, and it is quite a sizable reward. But I really think that some other standouts for me would be the recent Valgavoth Rakdos Punisher deck, which can draw quite a lot of cards and is playing in a new space. I loved seeing Punisher explored more thoroughly. I really liked that.
Sure.
And then I gotta give it up to Lathril, Matt. Like, I don't even necessarily care for Delves, but that Lathril deck's pretty messed up, and it was also like really easy to acquire is the other thing. Like, it was a very affordable deck at that.
It was everywhere. Yeah. Lathril being one of the most played commanders just in general of all time. It rose so quickly and so high. It's very, very hard to say that Lathril Elves deck isn't one of the best. Yeah, because it just kind of, again, redefined what elf precons were doing. It had such a massive impact on the format in the same way, Joey, the C16 decks did, because they were doing just something just so over the top and maybe ahead of their time again that, I understand why people would put Lathril on there. It might be the most powerful commander released in pre-constructed decks ever. I think that's a very, very fair assessment.
I don't know. You do have Atraxa out there still dominating a whole lot of space.
still out there, yeah.
And when I look at some of the I don't know, commonalities across the decks that I think stand out as like maybe one of the best, and I ask myself, is there an individual deck from this new Tarkir set that might hold its own, or like compete for the title of like what I think is the best individual precon?
Ooh, yeah.
I personally think that I am actually coming back to the Mardu deck, being the one that I find the most intriguing and the most, quite literally the most punchy. But it feels the most well observed. It feels the most well explored. Like every inch of that strategy is being mined for not just cards that make it work, but cards that make it thrive, cards that make it really flourish. I think a criticism I might have of the Sultai deck, for instance, is that it seems like it's doing quite a lot of the digging for value, but I'm like, do you have enough end game finishing power? Whereas that's not a concern that I have with the Mardu deck. I think that it has covered all of those bases from getting set up to ending the game really well. So Mardu is like one that's really standing out strong to me. But again, I play a lot of black and black-white at that. So I probably have a bias here, but that is why the Mardu deck I think is going to be one of those that becomes an all-timer for me.
I agree. I think Mardu might be the front runner. At least for now. My only concern with Sultai, same as yours, I think maybe it's a little fiddly is a good way to put it. There's a lot of things that kind of need to go right for the Sultai deck to pan out. I think it might, though. It just depends on if the pieces kind of come together. Same maybe for the Jeskai deck. I really like it. I think that the upside is there, but making it all work sometimes can be a challenge with these types of decks. I'm not really worried about the Abzan or the Temur deck. They're kind of known commodities when it comes to what they're trying to do. And it's, I say it's hard to do dragons wrong. I mean, you just put a bunch of dragons in a deck and put some ramp and you have a dragons deck. So I'm not worried about them being bad, but I also think that the ceiling, just because they're not terribly unique, maybe the Abzan deck is a little more unique compared to the rest of the predecessors with Toughness Matters, but I'm not really worried about those. But yeah, Mardu seems like the safest bet in this batch to just be an all-time, this deck just goes to town and just make sure to hit every single stop.
Yeah. I mean, again, though, we might be showing a bias here. Dragons are popular, Matt. So like the Temur deck.
Dragons are popular.
I think the Temur deck is one of the most expensive ones right now because there's quite a lot of reprint value in that one and quite a lot of appeal for, dragons in general to have something that's set up so neat and so nicely here. So it's possible that one might be one that like edges it out over time, that one starts to eclipse maybe some of the others. I could see that occurring. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of intrigue is happening on that Sultai deck too. I mean, if it's making you interested in playing graveyards, we got to pay attention, So there are some other contenders. I personally am keeping my eye the most on the Mardu in terms of all-timers, but the fact that there is this much debate for me in terms of like which one it is yet another sign of why I think this is such a strong batch.
I think the only criticism that is like super valid for the Temur deck, besides like it's dragons, how inventive can you get? But like people are going to say, why would you play Ireni when you can just play Myram? Well, sure, but like sometimes people want a little bit of a challenge to make their dragons deck work. But I absolutely love Ireni. I would rather build it just because I think it does things that aren't going to draw such a huge target on your back like Myram Sentinel Worm tends to do with dragons. So yeah, if you want to still play a super fun dragons deck and not get targeted instantly, Ireni's definitely the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to pick just one here, which is honestly a good sign.
It's a good problem to have. Yeah.
Yeah, what a good sign. Like, I am myself, like, Matt, we did an episode about like, oh, we should like take apart more of our decks because we have too many decks. It's a common problem. We were just building and building and building. And then these dang precons come out and I can't decide which one I want to build, but I know it's going to be minimum one of them and it might be multiple. And I'm like, shoot,
yeah,
like, this is not a good sign for me, actually.
And not even just that we're getting Tarkir Dragonstorm with these pre-constructed decks. There's still legends in the actual set itself that are super cool and super fun looking. Mm-hmm. And then don't forget, in like 2 months, Final Fantasy's coming out. So like we had to do that deck, or that episode, I should say, about taking your decks apart because we knew that the next 3 months was going to be so hard on our wallets. You got to make room somehow.
And I also just want to say preemptively, it's been really nice doing the show with you. I am sorry that we're going to not see you anymore after the Final Fantasy cards come out, because I know that you'll be way too busy to bother with us while you're off playing in your Final Fantasy Magic space.
I will have drowned in just sheer plastic from opening so many packs. I'm so excited for Final Fantasy, and it's really hard to overlook. Like that's the thing, is I know Final Fantasy as a set is on the horizon. I still don't want to shut up about these Tarkir Dragonstorm pre-constructed decks. This whole set in general, like we said to lead off the show, it feels like a Magic set that believes in itself again, and it's so refreshing. It's so fun. So yeah, I might be a Magic boomer because I've been playing since 2013 or whatever, but this just hits every single angle of attack that I want to see, from the world building aspect, from the cards being powerful, doing something cool and unique. Like there's so much to love about this set. I'm just so happy to have it.
I think that's a really important point to like end on, and even to dwell in for yet another moment, Matt, just to really hammer home what you said, because yes, because like we have in so many ways.
because yes.
Get that on a t-shirt. But no, we have felt so overwhelmed by quite a lot of what is happening in Magic, and it feels so nice to savor something. And this is so clearly a set that is worth savoring. Yeah. And as you have mentioned, like there are more and more products coming out every dang month, and it's so easy for things to become eclipsed or overshadowed as a result of that. And the whole reason we wanted to do this episode was to make sure that this fantastic looking set doesn't end up overshadowed and forgotten about, because it does not deserve to be. These sets look fire. All of the stuff about the set is resonating really, really strong. And it's so fantastic to live in the joy of that for a little bit, because there's quite a lot of joy to go around here.
There absolutely is. I'm going to savor this for as long as I can before, like you said, Joey, I'm just going to disappear. We'll see you in 2026, because Final Fantasy is just going to distract me for so long.
Yeah, it really is. But hey, I think this is the set of precons this year that is going to distract me the most. Like these are the ones that's fair. I'm so excited to play around with and to discover more with what they'll do. This is certainly an all-timer, and I am very intrigued to see what other folks out there think of these precons too. Like, do folks think that we're off our rocker? Do you think that maybe there's definitely another set that is like the best set of precons of all time? And what
there's not. Is there a contender? Nope.
I'm so glad that you're not biased at all.
It's so good. I mean, we've talked for an hour and a half about this, but if you truly do think that there is a contender to be the best precon set that just stands alone, maybe a best pre-constructed deck out there, definitely let us know in the comments. We do want to hear from you all, because there's so many good pre-constructed decks, and this is just the latest iteration and just some amazing work that the design team has done. And it's so cool just to see how they keep pushing the boundaries a little bit, and just enough to keep us coming back and having these just gushing episodes about the work that they're doing.
I like doing episodes where we get to focus on the joy of the game, and this was certainly one of those.
Yes.
And it's just fantastic to live in that space. But yeah, I'm glad that we haven't been at all biased about this, Matt, in terms of whether we think this is the but no, I think the criteria has been fair, and it's been nice to dissect that. What is it about these that is making our hearts smile as much as they do? Because clearly we can't stop smiling in this dang episode. And I want to hear from listeners about what resonates strongly with them too. How do these compare? This is quite a conversation. What is your favorite precon of all time, and where do these new offerings sit in relation to that? It's an important question to ask. With that though, Matt, I think it's about time that we call this episode to a close. So if our listeners want to get in touch with us, where can they find you online?
So you can find me on pretty much any social media platform at Mathimus55. That's MATHIMUS55. And don't forget, this episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. So keep an eye out on their website. Click the link in the description below, and it's going to take you to get some of the best sleeves on the market. Protect all of your dragons, all of your Mardu decks, but also going to get you a nice little discount. And you can get those exclusive EDH Retcast sleeves that are coming out very soon.
And you can find me everywhere online, from Instagram to Blue Sky at Joseph M. Schultz online. And you can find the cast online at EDH Retcast. Plus, if you've got a question for us, perhaps a challenge to stat submission that you'd like to let us know about, you can contact us at edhretcast@gmail.com. Listeners, we'll be back at you next week with more data and insights. But until then, remember, EDH Wreck your deck before you wreck your deck.